The Ministry of Timelines bears no official responsibility for the content of this research. This artifact was extracted directly from the Belbos timeline. We place its origin to be at the beginning of the 24th century. This documentary highlights the military capabilities of the Free Human Republic around that time. The Freedom-class cruiser first entered service in 2246, following years of development by the finest minds in naval intelligence. In 2235, the Admiralty put out a design brief calling for a larger, more capable vessel than the venerable but aging Darker-class destroyers, which it was known could be outmatched, as the hegemony's own vessels were far larger and far superior. In the wake of Admiral Fred Phillips' execution, the Admiralty carried out a number of highly secretive simulations of a conflict with the hegemony at large. Even given the fact their adversaries would be dogmatically following the parent protocols, so their actions could be easily predicted, every simulation ended with a total human defeat. The issues identified in these simulations did show the need for a larger, more armoured vessel capable of going toe-to-toe with the largest ships in the hegemony's arsenal, whilst maintaining the ability to destroy these smaller vessels which would likely be fielded by the vassal navies that would undoubtedly support their overlords. In the end, 3 versions of the Freedom class were put forwards by naval intelligence for final approval in late 2239. Battle simulations including these 3 designs as part of the fleet showed a clear winner in every metric. A design put forward by a small team led by Admiral Kiva Delix, based in the city of Nicosia on the island of Cyprus, managed to not only meet the specifications put forward by the Navy, but exceed them in every measurable way. The first design put forward for simulations was a pure brawler of a ship, capable of going toe-to-toe with anything the hegemony could field, and able to give back a beating far beyond what their vessels could manage. At first, it seemed like this design would be the one to beat, until the simulations involving the vassal states began. At this point it then became clear that the vessel would be easily picked apart by smaller, more mobile vessels, as its weapons simply could not come to bear on these lighter and more nimble opponents. The second design tested was similar to the first, with a concession to fighting smaller vessels by switching out one of its larger turrets for several smaller ones capable of tracking them. This at first seemed to be the answer, and tests showed that it accomplished everything the Navy had asked. The team from Luna, which had designed the vessel, celebrated after their turn in the simulators, certain that their design would be chosen. Then the third design was tested. Every record set by the previous ships was obliterated. Larger ships were destroyed faster, less damage was taken, and overall fewer ships were lost. Smaller ships were picked apart often before they could even get into firing range. The galaxy had been introduced to an ancient naval tactic from Earth, the aircraft carrier. Where the first 2 designs had sought to fit in as much firepower and armour as possible, vast amounts of the space in the Cypriot design were given over to a flight deck and hangar facilities for several squadrons of the SF A-48s, more colloquially known by its pilots and ground crew as Silver Arrows. The arrows would launch from outside of an enemy's combat range and strike, often before the Freedom class had even been detected. This, combined with a single large plasma cannon in case anything did get close, multiple batteries of point defense lasers, and a turret sporting the latest in coiled gun technologies, meant that even if you did get close to a Freedom class, it was still very, very dangerous. The final part of the process to choose the design was a simulation in which each design would fight the others, and even in close quarters. At first, it was assumed something was wrong with the simulation, as even when the other designs were given the opportunity to fire at point-blank range with their weapons, the Cypriot design took less damage than expected. When questioned, the designers explained about the final innovation of the Freedom class. When battle alarms sounded, there was a section of the crew whose job it was to clear the crew quarters of personal gear. Once complete, these quarters, all of which were on the outer hull of the vessel, were pumped full of a gel which had proved incredibly efficient at not only dispersing the kinetic energy of a projectile, but was also excellent at resisting the extreme radiation and temperatures put out by laser and plasma weaponry. Once combat was complete, the gel would be drained, the rooms cleaned, and normal life inside the quarters could then resume. This afforded the crew of 15,000 that served on board of each vessel a far higher chance of surviving a confrontation, and was part of the final decision to go with the Cypriot design. A prototype vessel named the Nicosia, in honour of the design team, was launched in early 2040, just in time for the hegemony of Belbos to collapse. 6 years later, the final version was being pushed en masse out of the production lines, ready to serve in wars against the Great Telforth Empire, and the various remnants of the hegemony. A Freedom class acted as the flagship of Carlos Velasco in the Battle of Hran-Hep Homan, and still forms the backbone of the fleet some 50 years later. Having seen action in every theatre of war humanity has entered since, the Silver Arrows have shown themselves to be a versatile and deadly weapon of war, and a push is currently on within the Admiralty to find a successor to this venerable strikecraft. Rumours also abound that after the deaths in both Telforth and Hegemony space, humanity is looking to build the successor to the Freedom class itself. Something larger, something even more brutal. But as things stand, the Admiralty assures the public that this is untrue. You of course will have to make up your own mind. Thank you for tuning in to this FBC production. The Freedom class cruiser showed that strikecraft can be, when wielded properly, a deadly weapon, and one would be wise to investigate the uses of this throughout our own forces. The gel armor technique is also being passed to our ship designers with instructions to include it in all of our designs going forwards.